I stand at the edge of the Oakland hills, city lights blurring through my tears, and the half-empty bottle of vodka in my trembling hand. 3 missed calls from the studio, 5 unanswered texts about tomorrow's session, and somewhere in my purse, a hotel key card with a room number scrawled on the back. Another married man, another compromise, another step deeper into the pit I've been digging for years. This wasn't supposed to be my story. The night air cuts through my thin jacket, but I barely feel it. The alcohol has numbed everything, my fingertips, my conscience, my ability to care about consequences. I take another swig, welcoming the familiar burn that promises to silence the voice in my head screaming that I'm destroying everything I've ever loved. Just one drink to take the edge off, I had promised myself this morning. The same lie I've been telling for 3 years, ever since Daddy's funeral left me drowning in grief and guilt. Music was supposed to be my salvation. My fingers on those church organ keys at age 12, that was pure worship, pure connection to something bigger than myself. Now my hands shake too much without alcohol to steady them, and I can't remember the last time I played anything that wasn't fueled by liquid courage. I close my eyes and sway, remembering this morning's disaster at the recording studio. The producers barely concealed disgust when I stumbled in 2 hours late, reeking of last night's decisions. The disappointment in his voice when I butchered the same melody for the 5th time. Maybe we should call it a day, Destiny, he had said, not even trying to hide his frustration. You're clearly not feeling well. Not feeling well, that's what we call it now. Not drunk at 10 a.m., not destroying my career one slurred note at a time. Just not feeling well. The wind carries distant sirens from the streets below, ambulances, police cars, fire trucks racing toward someone else's emergency. Oakland spreads beneath me like a circuit board, all those lives pulsing with purpose while I sit here contemplating which rock bottom to hit next. My phone buzzes again. I know who it is without looking. Richard, the worship leader from that mega church in San Francisco. Married Richard with his promises about leaving his wife and his hotel room waiting for me downtown. Another terrible decision queued up like songs on a playlist. I laugh bitterly into the darkness. Destiny Williams, the preacher's daughter. The musical prodigy who had record labels calling before she turned 20. The community's bright hope, now sitting drunk on a hillside, choosing between professional suicide and moral suicide. The bottle slips from my numb fingers, shattering against the rocks below. I watch the clear liquid seep into the earth like all my wasted potential, all my broken promises, all the dreams I've drowned in this poison. But the sound of breaking glass triggers something else, a memory I've been running from for months. The memory of another crash, of twisted metal and shattered lives, of the secret I've been drowning in vodka and lies ever since. 6 months earlier, I had everything a 28-year-old gospel singer could want. My 3rd album breakthrough had just gone platinum. My face graced the cover of Gospel Today magazine, and concert venues across the country sold out within hours of tickets going on sale. The Grammy nomination for Best Contemporary Gospel Album had brought calls from major labels offering contracts that made my mama weep with pride. Destiny, you're a miracle, my manager Marcus had said, reviewing the numbers from my latest tour. Sold-out shows, merchandise flying off the tables, and radio play that rivals the secular charts. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I had smiled and said something humble about God's favor, but the truth was simpler and darker. I had perfected the art of performing faith. My voice could make audiences believe I was anointed when I was really just talented. I could sell salvation to people while my own soul withered from neglect. That evening, I celebrated at my penthouse apartment in the Oakland Hills, champagne flowing as freely as the compliments from industry executives who suddenly wanted to be my best friend. The view from my floor-to-ceiling windows made me feel like I was floating above the ordinary world, untouchable and unstoppable. To Destiny, my backup singer raised her glass, the voice of a generation. I basked in their praise, already planning my crossover into mainstream music. Gospel was profitable, but secular music was where real superstars were made. I'd built my platform on praise and worship, now I could leverage it for lasting fame. My phone buzzed with a text from Mama. Watched your interview on TBN tonight. Your daddy would be so proud. Never forget where your gift comes from, baby girl. Where my gift comes from, I deleted the message without responding. God might have given me the voice, but I had built the career. This was all me, my stage presence, my song choices, my careful cultivation of an image that sold records and concert tickets. The drinking had started as image management. Industry events always featured expensive wine, and I discovered that a glass or two made me more charismatic on stage, more vulnerable in interviews. Alcohol helped me access emotions I'd learned to bury, made my performances more authentic even as my faith became more manufactured. But somewhere between breakthrough success and superstar status, the drink stopped being strategic and started being necessary. The pressure was immense. Every album had to outsell the last. Every performance had to top the previous one. Every interview required me to maintain a perfect Christian image while inside I felt increasingly hollow. "You seem tired," my vocal coach had observed during a recent lesson, noting how my high notes had lost their clarity. "Are you getting enough rest?" Rest? As if rest would solve the anxiety that gnawed at me constantly, the fear that someone would discover I was singing about a God I barely knew anymore. As if sleep could fill the emptiness that success hadn't even touched. I started keeping a flask in my dressing room, just for emergencies, I told myself. Just to calm my nerves before big performances. Just to access the vulnerability that made my ballads so powerful. The first time I performed drunk was an accident. I'd miscalculated my pre-show drinks and stepped onto the stage at the Gospel Music Association Awards slightly intoxicated. But something magical happened. I sang with an abandon and raw emotion that had the entire auditorium on their feet. The video went viral, and my album sales doubled. That's when I realized I'd discovered something dangerous. Alcohol didn't just calm my nerves, it unlocked a level of performance I couldn't access sober. So I started drinking before every show, every recording session, every interview, just enough to feel loose, fearless, anointed. The success continued. I won 3 Dove Awards, sold out Madison Square Garden, and earned enough money to buy my mama a house. My concerts became spiritual experiences for thousands of people who heard God in my voice, never suspecting that I was hearing nothing but the echo of my own ambition. But the drinking increased too. What started as performance enhancement became anxiety management, became all-day maintenance. I had bottles hidden throughout my apartment, my dressing room, my tour bus. The flask became flasks, plural, strategically placed for easy access. I was so good at hiding it that even I started to believe everything was fine. Functional alcoholics, I'd learned, were just very good at functioning, and I was very good at everything. Until the night 6 months ago when my functioning finally broke down completely. I still remember every detail of that Thursday evening in December. The rain had been falling steadily all day, turning San Francisco's streets into rivers of reflected neon. I'd been drinking since my afternoon vocal lesson. My coach had criticized my breathing technique, and I'd needed something to calm the rage that criticism always triggered. By 8 p.m., I was drunk but not admitting it, even to myself. I had plans to meet Richard, the worship leader who'd been pursuing me for months with text messages full of scripture and inappropriate promises. He was married, I was lonely, and alcohol had convinced me that both problems could solve each other. The drive to his hotel should have taken 20 minutes. In the rain, with my reflexes dulled by vodka, it took forever. I remember gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary, overcompensating for the way the road seemed to sway beneath my tires. I was checking my phone for Richard's room number when it happened. The intersection appeared out of nowhere, or maybe I missed the red light, or maybe the rain made everything invisible. I just remember the sickening moment when I realized I was about to hit something, someone, and my alcohol-soaked brain couldn't react fast enough to stop it. The sound will haunt me forever. Metal crumpling, glass exploding, a scream that might have been mine or might have been hers. My airbag deployed with a violence that left my face bloody, but I was conscious enough to see the bicycle crushed beneath my front bumper, and the woman who'd been riding it lying motionless in the street. For a moment that lasted an eternity, our eyes met. She was young, maybe 25, with blood running down her face, and her right leg bent at an impossible angle. But she was alive, conscious, looking at me with an expression I can't forget, not anger but sadness. Profound, crushing sadness. Then people were running toward us, shouting instructions, pulling out phones to call 911. In the chaos, with rain and darkness providing cover, I made the decision that would define the rest of my life. I drove away. My car was damaged but drivable, and panic overrode any remaining traces of conscience. I couldn't be caught drunk driving. I couldn't lose everything I'd built. So I left that young woman bleeding in the street and drove home, where I spent the night pacing my apartment and drinking everything I could find. The news report started the next morning. Colleen Lee, 24, aspiring teacher, struck by a hit-and-run driver while biking home from her night job. Critical condition, shattered pelvis, traumatic brain injury, uncertain prognosis. Police seeking information about a dark sedan with front-end damage. I watched the reports obsessively, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the remote. Colleen's parents appeared on camera, pleading for the driver to come forward. Her boyfriend talked about their plans to get married, to start a family, to change the world one classroom at a time, and I said nothing, did nothing, just drank myself unconscious every night and showed up at the studio the next morning pretending everything was fine. For 6 months, I've carried this secret like a cancer, drinking to numb the guilt and lying to everyone including myself. I followed Colleen's progress through news reports and hospital websites, watching as she fought for her life while I fought to forget what I'd done. 3 weeks ago, Colleen Lee died. Her injuries were too severe, the doctors said. Her brain never fully recovered from the trauma. She died without ever knowing who had stolen her future, and I learned about it from a 2-paragraph obituary buried on page 6 of the Chronicle. That's when my careful facade finally crumbled completely. The weeks after Colleen's death blurred together in an alcoholic haze. I stopped showing up for recording sessions, stopped returning calls from my manager, stopped pretending I was anything other than a walking corpse. My assistant came by my apartment twice, but I hid behind drawn curtains until she went away. The vodka ran out, so I switched to whatever I could find. Cooking wine, mouthwash, vanilla extract, anything with enough alcohol content to silence the voice that whispered murderer every time I closed my eyes. Richard kept texting, kept calling, kept promising that God would forgive anything if I just came to him. The irony was suffocating. A married worship leader offering salvation while propositioning another woman in a hotel room. But tonight, sitting on these hills with Colleen's blood on my hands and her death certificate in my memory, I finally understood something that alcohol had hidden from me for months. I wasn't just running from the police, or my family or my conscience. I was running from God. From the God my daddy had preached about every Sunday. The God who'd given me a gift for music that I'd perverted into a tool for fame and money. The God who'd watched me choose success over integrity, alcohol over honesty, and finally flee the scene, while an innocent young woman bled to death because of my choices. My phone buzzes again. Not Richard this time, but a number I don't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answer. Is this Destiny Williams? The voice is female, older, strained with grief. I recognize too well. Yes, I whisper, though my throat feels like sandpaper. My name is Pearl Lee. Colleen Lee was my daughter. The words hit me like a second collision. I can't breathe, can't think, can't do anything but hold the phone with both hands to keep from dropping it. The police gave me your number, she continues. They said you called the tip line yesterday and left a message about having information regarding Colleen's accident. The tip line. I don't remember calling any tip line, but then again I don't remember much from yesterday. The blackouts have been getting worse, and apparently drunk me had developed a conscience that sober me couldn't access. Mrs. Lee, can you meet me? She asks. Tonight. I know it's late, but I haven't been sleeping well since. I need to know what happened to my daughter. The address she gives me is a coffee shop in downtown Oakland. Neutral ground. Public place. Somewhere I can confess my sins to the mother of the woman I killed, and then disappear into whatever hell awaits people like me. I'll be there in an hour, I tell her, my voice barely audible. After I hang up, I sit in the darkness for a long time, watching the city lights blur and dance through my tears. This is it. This is how my story ends. Not with Grammy Awards or platinum albums, but with the truth finally catching up to the lies I've been living. I start my car and begin the drive down the hills toward what feels like my own execution. The coffee shop is nearly empty at 11 p.m., just a few night shift workers and insomniacs nursing their caffeine addictions. Pearl Lee sits in a corner booth, and I recognize her immediately from the news reports. Colleen's eyes, Colleen's delicate bone structure, aged by 6 months of unimaginable grief. She looks up as I approach, and I see her take in my appearance. The bloodshot eyes, the trembling hands, the guilty posture of someone who knows she doesn't deserve to be breathing when her daughter isn't. "Thank you for coming," she says simply, gesturing to the seat across from her. I sit down heavily, my legs suddenly unable to support my weight. "Mrs. Lee, I need to tell you something." "You were the driver," she says quietly. Not a question, a statement of fact. I stare at her, stunned. "How did you—" "The police said someone called the tip line from your number yesterday, claiming to have information about the hit and run. When they tried to call back, you didn't answer, but they did some research on you, found out about your drinking, your recent problems at the studio." She pauses, studying my face. "And I saw something in your eyes when you walked in, the same look I saw in the mirror for months after Colleen died. Guilt. I want to deny it, to lie, to run away again. But sitting across from this woman whose daughter I killed, the lies stick in my throat like broken glass." "Yes," I whisper, "it was me." The silence that follows feels like an eternity. I watch her face, waiting for the anger, the screaming, the demand that I rot in hell for what I've done. Instead, tears begin to flow down her cheeks. "She was coming home from tutoring," Pearl says softly. "She spent her evenings helping kids from the projects with their homework, for free. She said education was the only way to break the cycle of poverty." Each word is a knife twisting in my chest. "Mrs. Lee, I'm so sorry. Were you drunk?" she asks. The question hangs in the air like smoke. I could lie. I could claim it was just an accident, that I didn't see her in the rain and darkness. But looking at this woman's grief-stricken face, I find I can't add more lies to the mountain I've already built. "Yes," I say, "I was drunk." She closes her eyes for a long moment. When she opens them again, something has changed in her expression. "My daughter was a Christian," she says. "Real Christian, not like the people who just perform on stage. She believed in forgiveness, even for the worst things people do." "Mrs. Lee, the night before she died, she squeezed my hand and whispered something." Pearl's voice breaks. She said, "Mama, forgive them. Whoever did this to me, forgive them. That's what Jesus would do." The words hit me like a physical blow. I double over in my seat, sobbing with a violence that shakes the entire booth. Colleen Lee, dying in a hospital bed because of my selfish choices, had used her last breath to forgive me. "I don't deserve that," I gasped between sobs. "I don't deserve her forgiveness, or yours, or God's. I'm a murderer. I killed your daughter and drove away like a coward." Pearl reaches across the table and takes my trembling hands in hers. "Honey, none of us deserve God's forgiveness. That's what makes it grace." Through my tears, I see her clearly for the first time. Not just a grieving mother, but a woman of profound faith who's choosing to extend mercy where I deserve judgment. "Colleen's gone," she continues, her voice steady despite her tears. "Nothing you do can bring her back. But you're still here, still breathing, still able to choose what kind of person you want to be for whatever time you have left." "I don't know how," I whisper. "I don't know how to be anything other than what I am." "That's why we need Jesus," she says simply. "Because we can't fix ourselves. We can't undo the damage we've done, but He can take the worst things we've done and somehow use them for good." She pulls out a small Bible from her purse, worn with use and marked with years of notes. "Colleen read this every morning. She'd want you to have it." Horrified, I stare at the book like it might explode. "Mrs. Lee, I can't." "Yes, you can, and you will, because my daughter didn't die so you could drink yourself to death with guilt. She died because we live in a messed up, dark world where broken people make bad choices. But Jesus specializes in putting broken things back together." I take the Bible with shaking hands, feeling its weight, not just the physical weight, but the weight of possibility, of hope I don't deserve, but am being offered anyway. "What happens now?" I ask. "Now you call the police and tell them the truth," Pearl says. "You face the consequences of what you've done, and you let Jesus start rebuilding your life from whatever pieces are left." "And if I go to prison?" Then you go to prison as a daughter of God, instead of a slave to alcohol. Colleen found Jesus in a hospital bed, with tubes down her throat. You can find him anywhere, even behind bars. We sit in silence for a while, two women connected by tragedy, but somehow, impossibly, held together by grace. Finally, Pearl stands to leave. Will you pray with me? She asks. I haven't prayed a real prayer since Daddy's funeral, but I bow my head and let this hurting mother lead me to the foot of the cross, where her daughter had found peace. Jesus, Pearl begins. We're here with broken hearts and broken lives. Destiny has done terrible things, and she knows it. But you specialize in saving people who know they've messed up. My tears fall onto Colleen's Bible as Pearl continues. Take her guilt and give her grace. Take her addiction and give her freedom. Take her death and give her life. Show her that no one is too far gone for your love to reach. When she finishes, I look up to find her smiling through her tears. Welcome to the family, daughter, she says. Colleen would be so happy. After Pearl leaves, I sit alone in that coffee shop for another hour, holding Colleen Lee's Bible and trying to process what just happened. The woman whose daughter I killed with my drunk driving had just led me to Jesus. The irony is staggering. The grace is overwhelming. The responsibility is terrifying. I pull out my phone and dial 911. I need to report a hit-and-run accident, I tell the dispatcher. I was the driver. 2 years later, I stand in front of another church congregation, but this time I'm not performing for applause or record sales. I'm sharing my testimony at the Women's Correctional Facility, where I've been serving my sentence for vehicular manslaughter. The judge gave me 8 years, reduced to 5 for my guilty plea and cooperation with the investigation. The other inmates call me church girl because I spend most of my free time in the chapel, playing piano for anyone who wants to worship. My hands don't shake anymore, not because I've found some new strength, but because I've learned to depend on Jesus' strength when mine fails. Some days the guilt still threatens to overwhelm me, but I've learned to take it to the cross where Colleen's forgiveness and God's grace are waiting. Pearl Lee visits me every month. We've become family in the strangest way possible, two women bound together by loss and redemption. She brings me books, tells me about her work with Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and reminds me that God isn't finished with my story yet. I have news, she says, during her latest visit, her eyes bright with excitement. Good news, I hope, the best. The Victim Impact Program we've been working on, the one where drunk drivers meet with families of victims, just got approved for statewide implementation. They want you to be one of the lead coordinators when you get out. I stare at her, overwhelmed. They want a convicted felon to run a program? They want someone who understands both sides of the story, she corrects. Someone who's experienced the destruction, but also found redemption. That evening, alone in my cell, I open Colleen's Bible to a passage Pearl marked for me. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. All things, even hit-and-run accidents, even addiction, even manslaughter convictions. Somehow, in ways I'm only beginning to understand, God is taking the worst thing I've ever done and using it to save other lives. I won't get out for 3 more years, but I'm not wasting the time. I'm getting my counseling degree through the prison's education program. I'm leading Bible studies for women whose addictions mirror my own. I'm learning to play piano again, not for career advancement or personal glory, but as an offering of worship. The music is different now, cleaner, purer. When I play, I think about Colleen Lee tutoring kids in the projects, using her gifts to serve others. I think about Pearl Lee choosing forgiveness over revenge. I think about a God who can take a drunk driver and turn her into an instrument of healing. Tonight, I'm writing a letter to Richard, the worship leader who used to text me inappropriate messages. He's been arrested for sexual misconduct with multiple women in his congregation. I want to tell him what Pearl Lee taught me, that it's never too late to stop running from God and start running toward him. I also want to tell him about real worship. Not the performance I used to give in pursuit of fame, but the broken offering of a heart that's been shattered and rebuilt by grace. My story isn't a tragedy anymore, though it contains tragedy. It's not a success story, though it contains redemption. It's a resurrection story, the story of a woman who was dead in her addiction and alive in her pride, who killed an innocent girl and wanted to die herself, but who found Jesus waiting in the wreckage. Colleen Lee's Bible sits on my small desk, open to the book of Romans. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone. The new is here. The old Destiny Williams, the one who chose fame over integrity, alcohol over honesty, flight over responsibility. She died in that coffee shop with Pearl Lee. The new Destiny is still learning how to live, still discovering what it means to be loved unconditionally, still amazed that grace can reach even someone like me. I have 3 years left in this place. 3 years to prepare for whatever God has planned next. 3 years to let Him finish the work He started in my heart. But tonight, for the first time since I can remember, I'm not afraid of tomorrow, because I know who holds it, and I know He specializes in making beautiful things out of broken ones. The music is just beginning.